Hi, I'm Frances, counselor in Newsminster, BC, and I am challenging myself to go on YouTube, deep breath, and share what I've learned about addiction recovery. And for me, that path definitely begins with the 12-step program. And I am a person in long-term recovery from addiction uh, and other things that come with addiction. I am here today to share about step one of a 12-step program. There are many different 12-step programs. There's literally a 12-step program for any problem that you may be facing in your life. There are solutions to every problem, which is a wonderful thing, especially if you are stuck and struggling and feeling the hopelessness that is associated with being in addiction, any kind of addiction, whether that's drugs or alcohol, food, money, sex, codependency. There really is no limit to what we can be addicted to. Our phones, TV. Basically, addiction is anything we do compulsively and obsessively, and we don't want to, but we do it because we can't stop. And we do it regardless of all the consequences that happen in our lives because of our addiction. We can't stop. So it's a physical addiction to the substance, but then there's also the mental and emotional and spiritual aspects of addiction. It just really affects everything, which is why so many people consider it a disease. Because it literally just takes over your mind, your heart, your spirit, your body. I think if there was, a battle between good and evil, it is definitely that battle. Definitely is with addiction is evil, and recovery is the good guy. So I wanted to share a bit about step one. I am by no means an expert, as nobody in a 12-step program is an expert on the 12 steps, but I just wanted to share a bit of what helps me, and that maybe if a newcomer is coming across this video, that they might find some hope within it. That would be ideal. So I thought that I would start with actually reading a little bit from the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions from the AA book, and then also step one in the Narcotics Anonymous book. So I'm approaching this time as relaxed. For me today, it's Sunday morning, and Sunday morning has kind of a relaxed vibe. So I hope that you'll just kind of relax and settle in. And I don't know how long we'll be here for, but maybe approach it as a type of meeting where if you are struggling with addiction right now and you are trying to understand step one, I do hope that this will be of a benefit to you, and that this time that we have together will be something that helps you realize that you're not alone in your addiction, and that there's hope. There's hope for recovery. There is a solution. Many people have recovered, including myself. I know all too well about the feeling of hopelessness and disappointment in myself and shame at my own behavior. and it's not something that I would wish upon my worst enemy. Yeah, addiction is awful and horrible. And a huge part of why I'm challenging myself to do these videos is because I know that there is a solution, and I want more people to find it. When I was struggling by myself before I came into a 12-step program, I didn't know what the solution was. And although I understand the reasons for anonymity, I just think the stakes are too high to keep the solution hidden. So my spirit is leading me to share here. So that's who I am accountable to, is my God. And yeah, that's a little bit of the fighter in me. So come at me, haha. Okay, so I'm going to read from the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. This is from the AA program. So just kind of relax and we'll just read and hang out a little bit. So step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Oh, also, the reason why I'm reading from the AA book and the NA book, although there are many 12-step programs, is these are sort of the founding, what would that be? Founding, members, I don't know, of all 12-step programs. So I just think that that will help things not get too confusing. So if you are struggling with food or money or people or whatever, just insert what you're struggling with in terms of the substance that they're describing, because addiction is not about the what, it's about the why. It's really about not what we use, but why we use. And that's the reason why it doesn't matter what it is. Anyhow. Okay, so who cares to admit complete defeat? Practically no one, of course. Every natural instinct cries out against the idea of personal powerlessness. It is truly awful to admit that, glass in hand, we have warped our minds into such an obsession for destructive drinking that only an act of providence can remove it from us. No other kind of bankruptcy is like this one. Alcohol now become the creditor, bleeds us of all self-sufficiency and all will to resist its demands. Once this stark fact is accepted, our bankruptcy as going human concerns is complete. Actually, I'm quite a good reader, so I don't know why this is happening, but anyhow. But upon entering AA, we soon take quite another view of this absolute humiliation. We perceive that only through utter defeat are we able to make our first steps towards liberation and strength. Our admissions of personal powerlessness finally turn out to be a firm bedrock upon which happy and purposeful lives may be built. We know that little good can come to any alcoholic who joins AA unless he has first accepted his devastating weakness and all its consequences. Until he so humbles himself, his sobriety, if any, will be precarious. Of real happiness, he will find none at all. Proved beyond doubt by an immense experience, this is one of the facts of AA life. And then this is about hitting bottom. So why all this insistence that every AA must hit bottom first? The answer is that few people will sincerely try to practice the AA program unless they have hit bottom. For practicing AA's remaining 11 steps means the adoption of attitudes and actions that almost no alcoholic who is still drinking can dream of taking. Who wishes to be rigorously honest and tolerant? Who wants to confess his faults to another and make restitution for harm done? Who cares anything about a higher power, let alone meditation and prayer? Who wants to sacrifice time and energy in trying to carry AA's message to the next sufferer? No, the average alcoholic, self-centered in the extreme, doesn't care for this prospect, unless he has to do these things in order to stay alive himself. Under the lash of alcoholism, we are driven to AA, and there we discover the fatal nature of our situation. Then and only then do we become as open-minded to conviction and as willing to listen as the dying can be. We stand ready to do anything which will lift the merciless obsession from us. So that's step 1 for AA. Oops. This is step 1 from the NA book. And this one's a little bit longer, so settle in. Settle in with the cat and the coffee on Sunday morning. Step 1, we admitted we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. It doesn't matter what or how much we used. In Narcotics Anonymous, staying clean has to come first. We realize that we cannot use drugs and live. When we admit our powerlessness and our inability to manage our own lives, we open the door to recovery. No one could convince us that we were addicts. It is an admission that we have to make for ourselves. When some of us have doubts, we ask ourselves this question: can I control my use of any form of mind or mood altering chemicals? Most addicts will see that control is impossible the moment it is suggested. Whatever the outcome, we find that we cannot control our using for any length of time. This would clearly suggest that an addict has no control over drugs. Powerlessness means using drugs against our will. If we can't stop using, how can we tell ourselves we are in control? The inability to stop using, even with the greatest willpower and the most sincere desire, is what we mean when we say we have absolutely no choice. However, we do have a choice after we stop trying to justify our using. We didn't stumble into this fellowship brimming with love, honesty, open-mindedness, or willingness. We reached a point where we could no longer continue using because of the physical, mental, and spiritual pain. When we were beaten, we became willing. Our inability to control our usage of drugs is a symptom of the disease of addiction. We are powerless not only over drugs, but over our addiction as well. We need to admit this fact in order to recover. Addiction is a physical, mental, and spiritual disease that affects every area of our lives. The physical aspect of our disease is the compulsive use of drugs, the inability to stop using once we have started. The mental aspect of our disease is the obsession or overpowering desire to use, even when we are destroying our lives. The spiritual part of our disease is our total self-centeredness. We felt that we could stop whenever we wanted to, despite all evidence to the contrary. Denial, substitution, rationalization, justification, distrust of others, guilt, embarrassment, dereliction, degradation, isolation, and loss of control are all results of our disease. Our disease is progressive, incurable, and fatal. Most of us are relieved to find out we have a disease instead of a moral deficiency. We are not responsible for our disease, but we are responsible for our recovery. Most of us tried to stop using on our own, but we were unable to live with or without drugs. Eventually, we realized that we were powerless over our addiction. Many of us tried to stop using on sheer willpower. This action was a temporary solution. We saw that willpower alone would not work for any length of time. We tried countless other remedies: psychiatrists, hospitals, recovery houses, lovers, new towns, new jobs. Everything that we tried failed. We began to see that we had rationalized the most outrageous sort of nonsense to justify the mess that we had made of our lives with drugs. Until we let go of our reservations, no matter what they are, the foundation of our recovery is in danger. Reservations rob us of the benefits that this program has to offer. In ridding ourselves of all reservations, we surrender. Then and only then can we be helped to recover from the disease of addiction. Now the question is, if we are powerless, how can NA help? We begin by asking for help. The foundation of our program is the admission that we, by ourselves, do not have the power over addiction. When we can accept this fact, we have completed the first part of step 1. A second admission must be made before our foundation is complete. If we stop here, we will only know half the truth. We are great ones for manipulating the truth. We say on one hand, yes, I am powerless over my addiction. And on the other hand, when I get my life together, I can handle drugs. Such thoughts and actions led us back to active addiction. It never occurred to us to ask, if we can't control our addiction, how can we control our lives? We felt miserable without drugs, and our lives were unmanageable. Unemployability, dereliction, and destruction are easily seen as characteristics of an unmanageable life. Our families generally are disappointed, baffled, and confused by our actions and often desert or disown us. Becoming employed, socially acceptable, and reunited with our families does not make our lives manageable. Social acceptability does not equal recovery. We have found that we have no choice except to completely change our old ways of thinking or go back to using. When we give our best, it works for us as it has worked for others. When we could no longer stand our old ways, we began to change. It's almost done. From that point forward, we began to see that every clean day is a successful day, no matter what happens. Surrender means not having to fight anymore. We accept our addiction and life the way that it is. We become willing to do whatever is necessary to stay clean, even the things we don't like doing. Until we took step 1, we were full of fear and doubt. At this point, many of us felt lost and confused. We felt different. Upon working this step, we affirmed our surrender to the principles of NA. Only after surrender are we able to overcome the alienation of addiction. Help for addicts begins only when we are able to admit complete defeat. This can be frightening, but it is the foundation on which we built our lives. Step 1 means that we do not have to use, and this is a great freedom. It took a while for some of us to realize that our lives had become unmanageable. For others, the unmanageability of their lives was the only thing that was clear. We knew in our hearts that drugs had the power to change us into someone that we didn't want to be. Being clean and working this step, we are released from our chains. However, none of the steps work by magic. We do not just say the words of this step. We learn to live them. We see for ourselves that the program has something to offer us. We have found hope. We can learn to function in the world in which we live. We can find meaning and purpose in life and be rescued from insanity, depravity, and death. When we admit our powerlessness and inability to manage our own lives, we open the door for a power greater than ourselves to help us. It is not where we were that counts, but where we are going. So that's from the NA Blue Book. And yeah, so that's a couple different readings on step 1, and I thought I would start there. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you being here. Then I'm not alone talking to myself, which feels really weird when you do that. So my thing about doing these videos is that I'm learning how to do them. And so I'm approaching this as sort of a workshop, as maybe in the future I'll make a little bit more of a condensed video around step 1, because I think that would be helpful. But I'm just wanting to create a conversation around step 1, and if you want to engage in that conversation and in that dialogue, I invite you to put anything in the comments that you thought of while I was reading those readings. If anything stuck out to you or resonated with you or made you think about, you know, the things that you struggle with, I invite you to engage in the conversation in the comments, because then I can go back after the video and that will give me more ideas for future videos, and just hopefully help me learn how to be better at this stuff. Okay, so first step. I guess the first thing I wanted to do was maybe create, like, I overthink everything, just so you know. And so I've really done a deep dive on step 1, but then I also get a lot of fear and anxiety when I'm in front of the camera. So I've pretty much forgotten all of it. So I'm gonna have to read a little bit from my notes. But I guess when I think of, okay, we admitted we were powerless over our addiction and our lives had become unmanageable. So if you've been to a meeting, or if you go to a meeting, when somebody shares on step 1, often they'll share on step 1 in sponsorship. And if there's a newcomer in the meeting, a lot of people will hopefully share on their step 1 experience, which I will share on my step 1 experience, but I kind of wanted to break it down a little bit, because when I first came into recovery, like, I didn't understand this whole language and different ways of talking, and so I would look up a lot of different words trying to understand, you know, kind of like I wanted to understand, where I was going, or if I wanted to be a part of this thing, and feeling like, like I still had a choice at that point. Like, oh, do I want to join? I guess, I hadn't at that point admitted powerlessness, that I needed a 12-step program far more than a 12-step program needed me. So we admitted we were powerless over our addiction and that our lives had become unmanageable is step one. So the word we is the first word of that sentence, and the point of we instead of I is that we're no longer alone. When we come out of our addiction and we take step one, it's basically like we're going from, darkness and isolation and being alone in that hopelessness and despair, where we're thinking about taking a step, and we may be using and thinking about what can I do to change, but not actually changing. And so when we take step one, we step out of I and we step into we. So we're no longer alone. We're no longer in the darkness of addiction by ourselves. We have come into the light of recovery. And it really is, honestly, it is. Sometimes it can feel like, if you come out of a dark room and there's a bright light, it's kind of like, oh, it's can be overwhelming. The light can be overwhelming, especially because usually in addiction, we're in isolation and we spend a lot of our time alone. And so to even come into a meeting with, multiple different people that we don't know can be very overwhelming, and it can feel like that shocking kind of light. But I find for myself, if I find one person that I feel safe with, that I feel sort of calms me, then I'm okay. And so I try to be that person. If I'm at a meeting and I see a newcomer, I try to be the person that, just helps dim the light maybe a little bit, and helps calm things. So in the next word is admitted. So we admitted. So in admittance is basically the spiritual principle of step one is honesty. And so admitting is being honest, coming out of denial and being honest about our addiction, honest about the truth of the way that we've been living by ourselves in the dark, and the fact that we can't stop by ourselves, that we admitted, we were honest about the truth of our lives, how we've been behaving or, living, and that we need help, that we admitted. Yeah. I think in admitting is surrender, is giving up the fight. And in that admittance, it really is the death of our ego. Because I know for myself and for many people that I've met in recovery, we see asking for help as a weakness. And realistically, the thing that we do easily is a strength. So asking for help or not asking for help is a place where we're strong. I mean, it's not working, but it's a place where it's not a weakness, it's a strength because we do it easily. But if asking for help is hard, then it's a weakness. Does that make sense? I feel like that was really backwards. But basically, the easy thing for me to do is isolate and not ask for help. So the thing that requires courage for me, the thing that requires strength and courage, is to ask for help. So it's kind of like this paradox of what I think is a weakness is actually a strength, and what I think is a strength is actually a weakness. So me not asking for help is a weakness, not a strength, because my life is being ruined by my inability to ask for help. So how is that a strength? You know, and for myself, I grew up in a generation of, you know, remaining stoic and, you know, putting the mask on and, you know, pretending everything was fine and not talking about your, not looking, not, I can't remember what I was saying. Not looking at, yeah, I don't know. I totally lost that thought. Anyhow, okay, so we admitted we were powerless. So were is the next word that sticks out to me there. So we were powerless. So we're not powerless anymore once we step into step one. And over our addiction again is any substance or behavior that you are doing compulsively, that you think about obsessively, that you do compulsively, and despite the negative consequences of those actions in your life. And that's the basis of addiction, and that's why it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter whether it's chocolate or heroin. It doesn't matter if it's a person or a substance. It doesn't matter if it's gambling or food. It's not about what we use, it's about why we use. And that's what addiction is. And so I think that the world has a very narrow mindset, definition of what addiction is. And our lives have become unmanageable. So unmanageability, sometimes that looks like jails, institutions, recovery houses, just chaos, drama. Unmanageability can be in your finances, in your relationships. It can be mentally. You can have everything around you looking great, and mentally you're suffering on a daily basis, and nobody knows. So unmanageability can be different for different people. I think probably the core thing for myself around unmanageability is feeling out of alignment. Like I just feel like things are not right. I feel very uncertain, very unstable. Like all the foundations of the things that create a stable life for me are all moving around, and I can't get my footing or my bearings. And I just feel like things are falling apart. Basically, unmanageability to me feels like things are falling apart, whether that's in my mind, in my heart, or in my life. Yeah, so that's what unmanageability is to me. I would say that what I've learned about powerlessness is that I hated the word powerless because I'm a control freak. Hi. Well, not freak. I like order, and I feel safe in order. So I don't like to admit that I'm powerless, because I think, well, I could do something about that. You know, I have power over that. I have, you know, I can find a solution, or I can create a list. I can, you know, do this or do that or whatever. And the reality is there are some things that you just have no power over. And addiction is definitely one of those things. And the more you try to exert power over something you have no power over, the more power that you lose in yourself and in your life. You are draining yourself of your own power by fighting a battle that you will never win. And that's basically the place that I came to when I finally did surrender. And not only surrender, but commit to this way of life. In terms of, I had surrendered many times. It took me 8 years to really be able to commit to my recovery. And really, when I commit to my recovery, I commit to myself. I commit to not hurting myself no matter what happens in my life. I commit to not giving up my sobriety, myself. Like, whatever happens in my life, I'm not giving up me. Because when I use whatever it is that I use, I lose myself. You use, you lose. And for me, I believe picking up is giving up. It's me giving up the fight. And so it's interesting though, because for so long I tried to fight because I'm a fighter, and I tried to fight addiction. But fighting addiction just drained me of my energy. And really what helped me like finally commit to recovery was to surrender that I would never win that fight, and to focus on fighting for myself, fighting for my life, instead of fighting with myself. So, yeah, fighting for myself instead of with myself. That was surrender for me. And I think a part of that does come back to honesty and just looking at the evidence of my life and really looking at how much of my life had been wasted in a fight that I would never win. And did I want to spend the rest of my life fighting a battle I wasn't going to win? Or did I want to surrender to that battle? Okay, I'm not going to win that. So I know what to do, and I'm going to do what I need to do to recover. And I'm no longer going to fight doing what I need to do to recover. Because that's a part of the fight too, is, well, I don't want to do that. Like, yeah, I want to be clean, I want to be sober, I want to have a good life, but I don't want to do steps. I don't want to go to meetings. I don't want to, help people and not get paid. Like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, but I do want to be clean and sober. And I do want to be happy, joyous, and free. Like, I want the results without engaging and participating in the process that brings the results. So that's like somebody saying like, yeah, I want to be fit and healthy and have big muscles and, be at my goal weight and blah, blah, blah. But I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to walk. I don't want to exercise. I don't want to look at my diet. I don't want to do anything. I just want the results, but I don't want to actually like change my life or change the way I think or change the way I do anything. I don't want to change. I want my life to change, but I don't want to do anything. Like, that's like so weird. That's such a weird thought, And, but then that's the resistance. That's the resistance that we have to change. And it is a totally human trait, is that our resistance to change is, is usually equal to our desire to change. And it's that thing of like, what is going to win? Is the resistance to change going to win? Or is the desire to change going to win? And maybe that's, the universal battle between good and evil. And not everybody wins. A lot of people don't win. A lot of people give up and they don't fight and they don't want to engage in the process. and they don't want to let go of their ego, and they don't want to go into uncomfortable situations with people that they don't know and ask for help. And those people, more often than not, will lose the fight. So it's just about whether, for myself, like whether I was willing to lose the fight. And I wasn't willing to lose. I don't like losing. I want to win. So that means that I have to do certain things in order to win that battle. And that is surrender. Surrender to the fact that I have no power over my addiction, but I do have power over my life and what I choose to allow in my life. And I have power over where I go and what I do, and what I say and what I put into my mind and who I hang out with and all those kind of things. Like I'm powerless, but I am not helpless. And I think that a part of recovery as well is moving from this feeling of being a child, that things are happening to you as a child and you're a victim as a child. And that is true. When you are a child and there are things happening to you, you are being victimized. You have no control. You have no power. You can't just move. You don't know who to call. You don't know how to get help. Like that is true for a child. But when you are an adult, the definition of an adult is a person that takes responsibility for themselves. That is what an adult is. So when we respond in a way that maybe comes from a place of trauma, where we respond like we are a child, life is happening to us and we have no control. That's not true. That's not true. And that's a part of the recovery, is moving from a place of, I am not a child, I am an adult, and I am responsible for my own life. I'm responsible for my recovery and for my happiness and for my peace. And that's often not something that people want to hear. They really don't want to hear that. And that is something that I say quite often, because I love saying the things that people don't want to hear, because those are usually the things that they need to hear in order to recover. And yeah, it's from going from that place of realizing you're powerless over the addiction, but you're not helpless, that you're not a child that's experiencing something. You're an adult experiencing something. And if you will let go of your ego, which honestly, a huge part of ego is also childish, because we can't grow and learn and become better if we're not willing to step outside of our comfort zone. So adults challenge themselves to experience growth. I mean, not all adults, but definitely me. So I guess the other thing about step one is that it requires a lot of courage. And courage is action despite fear. And that it's not that we aren't afraid, but I think you do come to a place where you're more afraid of staying in your addiction and staying in the problem than you are about what's involved in helping yourself. So that's a part of that. Recovery does begin with step one, when we accept and surrender. The paradox is that we admit we're powerless and then we gain power. And that's the beautiful part of step one, is that we're able to do that, that we're able to empower ourselves to overcome addiction by admitting where we have no power, which is over the addiction. kind of tricky. So that's on powerlessness. It's not a lack of willpower. It is a lack of control. We cannot willpower something where we have no control. It's the same as trying to control a person, which then becomes abuse. And a big part of addiction is self-abuse. Because just like I said, I wouldn't do that to my worst enemy. Why would I make myself my worst enemy? Why would I treat myself as my worst enemy? Why would I hurt myself? If I love myself, why would I hurt myself and ruin my own life? It just doesn't make sense. So it's not a lack of willpower, it's a lack of control. And then it's like looking at what, if that is happening, and it did happen for me for many years, then why is it happening? Like, why don't I love myself? And how can I learn? How can I learn? Because I don't want to spend the rest of my life this way. I definitely resonate with the fact of our addiction is not our fault. It's not a moral failing. It's just, for me, it's just a part of me. And actually, it's become very oddly and total opposite of ego, is it's become one of the best parts of me. And it's opened up a life. And even doing this here now, this is not something I would have ever envisioned myself ever doing, for the sake of just doing it. And challenging myself to do things that are incredibly uncomfortable and feel really scary. If I didn't get clean and sober, there's no chance I would have done this. Like, I would have been way too afraid. And my desire to help people and to have a good life for myself is greater than my fear. And I do think that that is a big part of step one, is that your desire needs to be greater than your fear. Your desire for a better life needs to be greater than your fear of what people will think, or whatever you tell yourself to stay stuck. That your desire for a good life has to be greater than that fear. So another thing they say about step one is HOW, the acronym of HOW, honest, open, willing. So to be honest about what's going on with another person or a group, to be open to looking at things from a different perspective. I do think looking at things from a place of curiosity instead of shame, to be like, yeah, like, why do I keep doing this? Like, why do I keep making these same choices? Like, to look at, kind of take your eyes off the addiction and look beneath the addiction of, like, you know, why am I doing this? What is driving this? And I mean, really, that is where you, when you get into step work, you start to learn the different things that are driving your life. I would say that a big part of the power that comes from admitting that we're powerless over addiction and our lives have become unmanageable is that we begin to be able to choose our lives. So when we surrender, then we're kind of surrendering to the other steps, or going to meetings, or, you know, reaching out and asking for help, and we start to choose our lives instead of control our lives. And there's so much more freedom in choosing than controlling. because then you're letting go of the things that you can't control, and you are focusing on choosing a life that you want more than drugs or alcohol or whatever it is. Yeah. So I think I'm almost through all my thoughts, which is really pretty amazing, actually. I guess in terms of wrapping up, my personal experience with step one was it took a long time. It took 8 years, really. Because there is the surrender and there is the knowing, yes, I have a problem, and yes, this is what's involved in solving that problem. And then there's committing to doing it on a long-term basis and making it my lifestyle. And how step one feels is painful. Step one is painful. And I remember a friend of mine saying, like, oh, I quit doing XYZ, and it was awful. The withdrawal was awful, and da 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 da. And I'll never pick up again because I never want to go through that withdrawal again. And I was like, wow, I do that like literally all the time. Like I go through the withdrawal and the starting again, and that cycle of addiction. Like I went through that. I'm talking specifically about cigarettes, but I went through that for 10 years of just constantly quitting, withdrawal, all these different cycles, and then picking up again. And that's the cycle of any drug. It doesn't matter that it's cigarettes or it's crack. It just really doesn't matter. It's the cycle that matters, not what it is. I think that people get lost in saying like this addiction is bad and this addiction isn't so bad. And it's really, they're all the same mechanics. That it doesn't matter. It feels the same. It feels disappointing. It feels full of shame. It feels confusing. It feels exhausting. It feels like a heavy weight of like, I'm never gonna get this. I'm never gonna get this. I'm never gonna be free. And the reality is that's the addiction talking. That's not recovery. Recovery is there is hope. And if you don't give up and you put time and attention and energy, like you put your body, your butt in the seat at a meeting, in the seat at your desk doing your step work, in the seat going to meet your sponsor or your counselor or whatever, like you have to invest. You have to invest yourself. You are not going to get the results without engaging in the process of recovery. You are not going to recover without engaging in the process of recovery. Like you need to do things to recover. Like it's not just gonna happen. And honestly, like thinking that it will is ego and entitlement and self-centered and selfish. It's like I just expect to get this great life, and all I have to do is show up. And that's not real life. And it's not real. It's not true. It's not real. It's not working. I mean, honestly, for myself personally, I have earned my life. I have earned my peace. I have earned my happiness. I have earned every little bit of what I experience today because I have done the work. I have done the work of recovery. I don't have a perfect life. I don't have a perfect recovery. I'm not perfectly spiritual. I'm not any of those things, but I am free from addiction today. I am free from shame today. Not that I don't ever feel shame, because I do, but I'm able to correct it. I don't have to use over it. Like, I'm free from addiction today. Just for today, I am free from addiction. And if I do the things that I've been consistently doing for 11 years, I will continue to be free for the rest of my life. That no matter what happens in my life, no matter what happens with my finances or my employment or my relationships or whatever happens in my life, I will not give up on myself. I will not lose my sobriety and my peace over circumstances. I will not lose my peace over circumstances. And that is what I have learned as a result of engaging in the process of recovery. And that process of recovery began with admitting that I was powerless. I was powerless over my addiction. My life had become unmanageable with relationships and housing and consequences. But that if I was willing, if I was honest, open, and willing to engage in the process of recovery, to save my own life and to fight for my own life, that I would recover, that I would succeed. I do believe that. I do believe that if people fully engage in the process of recovery, that they will succeed. And it is those things of putting your butt in the seat of the things that you don't want to do, that your ego doesn't want to do, that you just want the results without doing the work. I've had to earn my life, and honestly, I think that most people in recovery have had to earn it. And then it's like, then we earn this life, and we want other people to have it. But you can't just have it. You have to earn it. I mean, maybe it's different for different people, but for me, I definitely needed to earn it. Doing those steps, I did not want to do the steps. I did not want to be honest with another human being about my faults and flaws. I did not want to go to meetings. I did not want to share. I did not want to do any of it, but I did want the result. I did want a good life. So you got to do the work. Nobody will do it for you. And if you expect to get a good life without doing the work, you are going to constantly experience pain. So that's step one. And I do think that although it is a painful first step, it is a necessary first step. And you don't have to do it perfectly. Just don't give up. Don't give up on a better life. Don't give up on being the person that you want to be, that you believe in your heart that you could be, that you don't know why it's so hard to get to that person, although it's almost like this person that you believe in yourself, you believe you can be this person that you want to be, but it's like they're behind this glass wall, inaccessible to you, and maybe sometimes you have like a glimpse of that, but don't give up on that. Don't give up on the person that you're meant to be. Because we do recover. We do recover if we do the work. So that's my step one video. Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you. I'm grateful that you've stayed the whole time. And I hope that this video will be helpful to other people that might find it in their journey. And for myself, I'm grateful that I showed up. I struggled with showing up today and this weekend, so I'm proud of myself. And I think that that's what showing up will do for us. Staying in our addiction will never make us proud of ourselves. Engaging in the process of recovery and challenging ourselves to overcome our fears, that will make us proud of ourselves. So I hope you do things that will make you proud of yourself. And I hope you have a great day. Bye.